Okay, so hello everyone. I'm Joanna Penn from thecreativepenn.com, and tonight we are talking about planning for 2017. And I have a presentation, and then I'm going to go into a Q&A. And so we will see how we're going to do this evening in terms of how long it takes. When I was preparing the slides, it was very important that we don't go nuts. I mean, we could have gone completely nuts on planning, but I've decided to calm down a little bit. I will also share the link to the slides at the end, so you will be able to download the slides. And if you have any technical problems, then I will be sending out a replay tomorrow, or perhaps, yeah, probably tomorrow. Let's face it, it's still not quite the new year. So, okay, and we Kristen says go nuts. Yeah, we might go nuts, but I only have a cup of peppermint tea this evening. I don't have the glass of wine that I sometimes do. So, oh, I should also say happy Christmas, happy holidays, and almost happy New Year to everyone. I forgot that we are like in that holiday period. Don't know about everyone else, but I love what I do. So like we're back at work, we're loving it. Okay, I'm going to share my screen and we'll start the presentation. My husband, Jonathan, is ready to tell me if I drop off the internet like I did last time, but hopefully I won't. Okay, so here we go. And Q&A. So just in case anyone doesn't know who I am, I'm assuming you generally do, but the reason I like to talk about this is because when we're talking about planning for 2017, you've got to remember that A, I do this as a full-time living, and two, I have these two brands, the fiction and the non-fiction. So if you think she has way too much going on, that's because I have way too much going on, and I fully expect your plans to be potentially smaller. I do not expect you to be running two businesses like this. So I just wanted to kind of remind you that this is fiction and non-fiction, but this is what we're going to cover this evening. So first of all, and I think this is the most important thing at this time of year, how to take a step back and decide what you really want for your creative life. And I actually think this will be the main thing that you get out of this evening, I hope. I will be sharing some tips and tools and more granular things, but I think at this time of year, especially around, you know, thinking about the next year ahead and priorities, this will be the thing that helps you. Also, prioritizing your to-do list at a more granular level so you stop wasting time, which I know we all want to do. Calculating the time you need to achieve things, and also a production schedule. And I will be sharing mine, and I think you'll be surprised at mine. Okay, so this is why I wanted to do the session this evening, because my to-do list makes me feel like this. And I just want to see in the comments, just say, you know, does your to-do list make you feel kind of crazy? You know, is it just a never-ending list of stuff? Amber says, absolutely. Dawn says, yes, yes. Oh my gosh, overwhelmed. Dean says, oh, I can't stick to it. And this is the point. This is why I wanted to do this evening. Kim says, totally stresses me out. And that's the thing. I want us in 2017, like I want us to pledge, we're going to have a pledge to not end the year feeling like this. And basically what happened to me just before Christmas is I ended up being really grumpy and just, oh, why didn't I achieve all the things I wanted to achieve? Actually, this happens every year. But my to-do list is still too big and I'm trying to manage it. So preparing these slides is kind of trying to help me and helping you at the same time. So this is what I thought about, and I don't know if you remember this, like I think I did this at school, and if you haven't heard of it before, then I will explain it. But basically the idea is that you've got this jar of your life, this big jar, and that if you fill the jar full of sand, like the little things, you won't be able to get the big rocks in or the medium stones. So what you have to do is fill your jar or your life in the right order. So you have to put the big stuff in first, then you put the medium stones in, and then you fill the rest with sand. And what I was feeling is that so much of what we do running around on the internet, apart from coming to my webinars, of course, is filling stuff with sand. and, for example, social media, and we will come back to that. So the aim of today is to think about filling your jar in the right order, and this thinking of this metaphor of the jar with the rocks, and what are the big rocks that need to go in there. The other question that I want you to think about is, who are you modeling and why? Now, I always get really thrilled and happy that some of you consider me a model. So I wanted to share who I consider a model, and I want to be Stephen King. Like, the JF Penn half of me wants to be like Stephen King. That is the model I look towards, which is someone who writes incredible fiction and is well loved for his fiction, is also very wealthy because of his fiction. Also there I've got Dean Wesley Smith and Christine Catherine Rush, who are my kind of indie author models. They're also a marriage mentor sort of example to me, because they're two people who are very happily married and just have done amazing things together. So I model them in terms of being an indie, because of course Stephen King is not an indie author. And also in terms of having a business. So Dean and Chris both do fiction, non-fiction, speaking, workshops, all the types of things that I do. So if I was only aiming to be Stephen King, I would give up the creative pen. And I absolutely considered that a couple of years ago, and it hasn't actually come up this year, I don't think. But thinking about what you actually want to do with your life, and are you doing things that will get you to the point of that life? So I have the picture there at the bottom, if you can see that. Yeah, you can just about see that. And remember, I'm going to share the slides with you at the end. So you're going to get all the words if you can't see the words properly. But the picture at the bottom is from London Book Fair in 2014, I think, where I met, there's Hugh Howey, that's Barbara Freethy, Jacinda Wilder there, Liliana Hart, Bella Andre, really the 7-figure, 8-figure indie authors. And what's incredible about these, mostly ladies, and then Hugh Howey, is that they pretty much only do fiction. But take someone like Hugh Howey, who of course is an incredible author. Hugh lives on a boat and is sailing around the world on his own. Obviously he's finding friends along the way, but the question is, do you want a life like that, or are you happy doing the other things in your life and being with your family? And do you want to only write fiction all the time? How do you want to do this? So I want you to, like I said, take a step back and think, who are you modeling and why? Why do you want what they have, and how are you going to get there in 5 to 10 years time? Yeah, so I think that's a really important question. I actually, when I was doing this, I put a picture of Tony Robbins next to Stephen King, and then I removed it because even though I think Tony Robbins is awesome, there is not much about his life that I want. The guy spends most of his time speaking and doing live events, and that's just not me. And his personality is so far away from mine, it's crazy. So that's why I picked Chris and Dean. So I want you to think about this in terms of your goals. Like, this is really up at the high level here. Who are the couple of people that you could put together to make a mishmash of a model for your goals? Okay, so we're going to start coming down. So there's sort of your number one up there, big level. And now I want you to think about the number one result by the end, this time next year. So 29th of December, 2017, what is the one thing you want to have achieved? And these are the big rocks. So again, think about our jar. I'm going to assume that you have a jar for your writing life. Obviously your big rocks are your family, your health. Your family and your health are two really, really big things. And of course your day job will, if you have a day job, which most of you will, that will be another big rock. So we're going to have a separate jar for our writing life. What is the one big thing you want to have achieved by the end of the year? Oh, Amber says the problem I want it all at once. Yes, we all want it all at once. I I would love to like be having my books made into films right now, like Stephen King, right? Wouldn't we all? But that just doesn't happen. You know, Meg says earning six figures. You know, I have absolute faith that, Meg, you will make six figures if you keep putting out the production that you are, and I know you are. So Daniel says this year my goal is make money from writing. And what about your first dollar or your first $10? That's what I want you guys to think about. Or will I put $100 on the screen? But it's great that you're all sharing your big goals in here. But as we go through this, I want you to be writing these down. So I'm assuming that you're all very good and that you have notebooks or journals ready. And in fact, by this time next year, one of my small stones is to have a journal that you can write in that's Creative Penn branded. So that'll be fun. But anyway, back to you. So this number one big rock is what I want you to potentially write on a big thing and stick it by your desk, by your writing desk. Because what I feel happens is, you know, we come up with the one goal here. So Kat said first $1,000 a month. I'm presuming that's dollars, might be pounds, euros, whatever. I want you to write down that one thing, and that one thing will be the thing that you keep focusing on. So as we get down to the lower levels is to, you know, think about that, to break it down further. Anita says, I have nothing against making money. It's just not as important as being able to enjoy the creative process. So if your goal is not money and it's not publishing, maybe it's just, you know, a creative goal, which is amazing, then write down what that is specifically, because this is the thing about goals. They need to be measurable. So enjoying the creative process is not necessarily measurable unless you have the goal is to finish a first draft of the book, or something that is tangible by the end of the year. So yeah, coming back to that. So then when you're thinking about that one big goal, you need to consider what are the non-negotiable aspects that you have to do in order to achieve this one goal. And again, we're kind of coming down the levels here. But if your goal is, for example, to complete the first draft of your book, then you have to schedule writing time. If you want to publish a book, you need editing time. And the publishing bit doesn't take very long. The writing, editing, marketing stuff takes a lot longer. If you want to sell 1,000 books, then you need to learn and implement specific marketing techniques. If you want to make $100 or $1,000 or whatever, then you need to learn and implement sales. You need to put stuff out there for sale and learn the techniques of selling. So these are all quite different goals. And I think one of the problems, again, is that especially newer authors coming into this are kind of overwhelmed with, oh my goodness, well, I need my writing time and I need my marketing time. And that's true, but I want you to start thinking in terms of the jar and the rocks and what you have to do in order to achieve your big rock. So if you get to the end of the year and you can't like hold up a book like this, have you just whittled away the time doing something else? And I know I did that for many years. I mean, one of the reasons I was so miserable in my day job is because I just felt like everything disappeared, like nothing lasted. You know, I would work, and we would do all of these implementation things because I did software implementation in financial departments in big companies. If you didn't know, terribly boring. And we would just do these projects and project after project. And I would just think, well, the money comes in, we spend the money and that's it. And now I measure my life by what I create. And that is the books I put out and the lives I touch. So very important to consider, what will you really be unhappy with yourself for if you haven't done this by the end of the year? Or right now, what are you upset about that you haven't done this year? In fact, that's a really good question to ask yourself. You know, are you annoyed that you haven't spent more time on social media? I know I'm annoyed that I haven't read more books this year. And I think it's because I've spent too much time on my phone looking at other things. So one of my goals is more reading. So Good. I'm glad you're all putting down things. Okay, good. I'm glad you're finding this useful. So these are the non-negotiable aspects. And you should be writing down now on your journal what is non-negotiable to achieve that big rock goal. Okay, now obviously we don't have time to break down every single goal into small parts, but this is one example of breaking down writing a book, which obviously for all of us is something we have to keep doing. And of course we love doing it, that's why we do this. But this is how you can break down your time into writing a book. So deciding on the word count, then looking at how much time you have. So say you have 3 sessions a week and you can do that for 7 months. That gives you 84 writing sessions, and to make 70,000 words, you only need like less than 1,000 words per session to do a first draft. That's around 3 hours writing a week. Now, and that's for only 7 months. So if your goal is to write the novel, or obviously if you're going to write several novels, so I saw Susan there is writing novels, complete series in 2017. So again, it's breaking it down into how many words do you need. So for a new writer, it might be 500 words, 1,000 words. For an established writer, it might be 2,000, 5,000 words within a first draft period. So that's a really good way of breaking it down. Now, if your goal is, for example, we're going to come back to some of the marketing things. Just having a look over here. Good. Danielle says this seems less scary breaking it down this way. And I think this is the point, because we want to start at that big goal. Like, I really do want to be Stephen King. Not obviously him, but when I'm 65, which is 24 years time, then I want to have his level of success in fiction, and therefore I need to write more fiction. I love doing this with you guys, and I'm going to obviously continue with the Creative Pen and trying to help other people, but my journey is only useful to you if I continue it. So for me, this is actually where I'm coming back to. How do I get that first draft written of a new series? I'm writing a new series as well. In fact, I think I'm coming to that. So let's get into more detail. Once you know what you need, then it's about scheduling your time. And again, this is probably the biggest thing. And I've talked about this before in terms of writing time, but it's exactly the same if you have a marketing goal or a sales goal. Is basically to schedule that time as you would any other appointment. And I've been using a Filofax. It's not even on my desk anymore. I've been using a Filofax up until really recently. Up until, if you listen to the podcast, the episode with Mark McGuinness, when I said to him, I'm really worried about losing my Filofax. Since then, I've moved onto Google Calendar. And what I found really interesting is actually slotting in the JF Pen writing time into that. And you can see there an example of my word count calendar, calendar on the wall. So what I actually have, I have a wall calendar as well this year, which has the big projects per month. And then for my daily schedule, I've got all the little, the hourly breaks there. Vilhelmina says she does it too with Google Calendar. Yeah, Google Calendar is super useful. Audra says, do you work weekends? I love working, to be fair, but also this year, as I said, one of my goals is to read more, also to get more healthy. I had a bit of a good healthy patch and then I let it slide. So I'm going to try and work less at weekends in 2017. And but depends what you call work. It's a bit like Tim Ferriss with the 4-hour work week. What is work when you do what you love? But I want to be reading more at the weekends as opposed to checking Twitter, for example. I am a workaholic, yes, Dean. ISO says, this is connecting a lot of dots for me. I was trying to reach too many big rocks. I'm glad that really helps because, maybe you only have the one big rock to aim for this year. Okay, so when you have a look at scheduling your time, and I just want to challenge anyone who doesn't already schedule their time. So if you have children, do you schedule their play dates? Do you schedule their school performances? I bet you probably do. Do you schedule your, gym classes? Do you schedule your holidays? You must have some kind of planner in your life that organizes these other things. And the challenge here is use whatever scheduling system you want to actually schedule your writing life. Let's call it your writing lifetime for these other tasks. And the question is, if you don't have any time, you have to give something up. And that can be tough. What do you want to give up? And yeah, I mean, it's a tough question, but this is something that my wonderful husband, Jonathan, has been doing for the last month or so. And now I'm really excited to start doing it too, which is we're adding in an extra morning slot for the new goals that we both have separately in 2017. So obviously, because of the business I run and the goals that I have, I've got a lot of goals. But for me to write this new series, and plotting a new series is a big thing, as many of you will know. So I'm going to have this extra time between 6 a.m. until breakfast in the morning to actually work on brain time for this series. And that is new time for me, because in the last year or so, my sleeping has got a lot longer. Now, to facilitate this, we're going to go to bed earlier because I really enjoy my sleeping. So that's one example of adding in something where, in order to find more time. Is this just the writing time? Danielle says, what I want to say is this is your writing lifetime. So whatever your big rock is, maybe we'll call it big rock time. So this is your big rock time for 2017. Where will you find that time is the question. So yeah, write down, where will I find the time? And yes, you may have to give something up, but there you go. Maria, I hope I said that right, or maybe it's Marja. Scheduling is easy when it comes to the writing. It gets impossible when you add in marketing. I'm going to come to that. Yeah, okay. That stuff we've done so far is the big rock. And then we're thinking about the rest of it. So that's the other stuff. And as we said, if your big rock is to sell 1,000 books or make $100 a month, then some of that big rock time may well be in marketing. But for the rest of us, and I think generally for most of us, it comes down to this: maker time versus manager time. And I can't remember who came up with this distinction, but it's become sort of a thing in the entrepreneurial space. So your maker time is when you're actually creating the products that your books, your books and your products. So end of days, when I was writing this in would have been September, October, that was maker time. And I pretty much cancelled out any other time. Like when I'm writing that first draft, I often don't do much else. Like I just do maintenance tasks. And that's what I do for my maker time. And I enter JF Penn space. The other time is manager time. So the manager time is the admin, the emails, the website, the Twitter, the marketing stuff that we all have to do if we want to run a successful author business. So what I want you to consider now with the next rocks is that maker time versus manager time. If the big rock is the maker, what are the little stones of the manager time? And when you think about when are you most creative, for me it's the morning. So my maker time will always be morning, and my downtime is the evening. So like right now, I wouldn't be writing fiction right now. So I'm talking to you guys. This is officially downtime. But normally evening is downtime for me. Lucy says, Did you ever have a time when you had a day job, write a book and created a blog all at the same time? Yes, absolutely, Lucy. Who you see right now, this was not me. Back in 2006, I started writing. 2008, I was writing. 2008 to 2011, I was working a day job as a consultant. I was building the Creative Pen. I wrote my first 5 books during that time. I built up an email list. Like all of you, this is where I started as well. But making the time, and what I did when I had a day job was I would, like I'm doing now, get up early and do my maker time. So I would get up at 5 because I lived in Brisbane and it was easier. And I would do my maker time, and then getting a smartphone around, must have been 20, I can't remember when I got an iPhone for the first time, but once I got my iPhone, I would do stuff at lunchtime. So I would do social media at lunchtime, and then in the evening I did the podcast, I did the blog, I did the learning, the marketing, all of those things. So obviously it's going to be how much you really want this. But I really wanted it, but then I was, very miserable in my job. So there we go. Oh, Susan says 5:30 here. I write in the mornings before work. Awesome. And Danielle's from Vegas. I will be back in Brisbane in February. So excited about that. Okay, so with the other blocks of time, and I've written here at the bottom, you have to look at the kind of, let's say you have 6 more stones that you need to fill, and each one gets a 2-month block. So one of the blocks might be build my author website. If you don't have an author website and you're doing this seriously, you need an author website. So that might be something you have to do, and that goes into your manager time stone block. And sometime within those 2 months, you have to sit down and do the work. Maybe you have to block out a weekend, which is often the best way to do it, to do one of these tasks, or set up an email list, which again, I actually today have been redoing my autoresponders, and it's really painful, but I know it has to be done, and I've been putting it off for ages, and I was just like, just do it. So there we do. Okay. So that's what I want you to think about. What is your maker time? And what is your manager time? And we do need both, absolutely. So here's more details on the one-off tasks, or the medium size rocks. So author website. So I have a tutorial. If you don't have an author website, you can go through my tutorial and build yourself one. If you want to set up a lead magnet and build an email list, I did a webinar with Nick Stevenson, and there's a link there. Both of those links, the top one is a tutorial and the second one is a webinar with Nick and I. Some of you are probably on that one. That's a replay on how to build your email list. One of the tasks might be researching the categories, keywords, and authors in your genre. Another one might be learning how to use an online tool. So, and I put Canva here, canva.com, because seriously, I use Canva certainly 4 or 5 times a week to do social media images, to do things for the blog. Canva has become one of my most used tools, and I think everybody should spend like half an hour to an hour learning how to use something like Canva to bring things alive with images. Lots of people loving Canva. Go and check it out, canva.com. And yes, Canva is way better than GIMP. GIMP is a program. Canva is a, I'll put the link in the chat there, canva.com. There we go. It is, that's an example of something that once you learn how to use it once, you can just, every time you go, oh, I need a new image for Facebook, or I need to do an image for my blog, or I need some shareable quote for something, you can use something like Canva, and you don't have to spend any more time on it. Obviously, learning something like Facebook advertising could take longer, but you could do it in block. So you could say, okay, January, February, I'm going to build my website in my manager time. March, April, I'm going to understand how to use Facebook ads. And obviously I support Mark Dawson's course, wonderful course, but there's lots of information free online as well. So you don't have to spend money to do a lot of these things. There's so much free information. So I don't want you to think you need loads of money to do all of this. You definitely don't. And certainly Canva's a great example of a free tool that I use all the time. Another great one that I'm getting images from right now is Pixabay. I'll put it on here, pixabay.com, where you can get free images and you don't even have to credit people. So it's, you know, obviously it's nice to, but if you want them for sharing on social media and stuff, really great images. So that's really cool. So that's another example of a block, and I think image marketing particularly is very useful. All right, so does that make sense? You've got your big rocks and these are your medium-sized rocks. Does that make sense to people? This rock metaphor? Makes sense. Excellent. I hope some of you are drawing pictures of the big jar and labeling the rocks. I know Meg is an illustrator, so Meg, I'm expecting to see a rock picture later. Amber says, do you set one big rock and everything else is medium? Amber, it's going to depend on how much time you have, but say you have not even written one book yet. I fully want your one big rock to be finish my book. And that is a big enough rock. If you have 20 books, then your one big rock is not going to be write one book. Your big rock will be something else. So the next thing is to consider what are the other regular things. So we've got the kind of bigger one-off tasks, like building your author website is something that, yes, you do need like a whole weekend, and you can pretty much, you know, I've said that you can do the tutorial in 30 minutes, but you may need a whole weekend to have a go at WordPress. But some of the things that you will need to do on a more regular occasion, for example, I use and have used for years now Buffer app, in the middle here, Feedly and Buffer app on my phone, to schedule content into Twitter. So I do that pretty much, you know, it might take me 5-10 minutes a day, and it will add stuff to my buffer and it will automatically put it on social media. So those of you who think I'm on Twitter all the time, that is not true. I just use these different tools to schedule my social media. So definitely if you want to include social media in your marketing schedule, then using some of these tools that you can use now are really great. Or you can consider outsourcing if you have the budget. But many times there are tools now that will answer the questions that you have. So for example, Buffer is great at adding new content from Feedly. But Meet Edgar, which is the other one. Now, Edgar is quite expensive, so I don't recommend it if you're just starting out, but Edgar will repost my older content. So if you're someone who's got a blog, has been going for a long time, then using something like Edgar is super useful. The other thing is setting reminders in your calendar. So I use a to-do list called Things. I'm on the Mac and it syncs between my phone and my MacBook Pro. And basically you can set recurring things. Obviously you can do this in a calendar app as well. But essentially you have to organize this in advance. And I think if you spend a bit of time beginning of the year, as you're doing right now, sorting out your calendar and sorting out your reminders and not going over the top, everybody. So not 800 reminders, but, you know, a reminder to build your website, you know, in February, or a reminder to update, you know, your autoresponders, as I had, for a year's time, that type of thing. Those are the things that reminders are really good for. Oh, Kristen says this is already a great presentation, a freaking great one. Thank you, Kristen. Delisha says, how do you decide what your images, color and style would be? this actually is a great question. I'll answer it very quickly, is to think about modeling again. All of this stuff, I haven't just pulled all of this information from the air. This is all stuff that I have modeled from other people. So I learned about Meet Edgar from another blogger. I learned, the blog design for the Creative Pen and for JF Pen are modeled on other author websites. So the idea when you're thinking about modeling is to model for all these different areas, find out what somebody else is doing, and then use that same tool. Okay, so hopefully that makes sense. And I've put a link there. And of course, remember, you will get the slides. I've put a link there to a blog post I did, which is all the tools that I use in my author business, and it's quite overwhelming. So remember, you don't have to use all the things I do. I run quite a number of different businesses now, and I have a budget. So when you start, you only need a couple of things, like maybe you need WordPress, that type of thing. So, when you're writing your book, you need Scrivener. I mean, you really need Scrivener. I can't see how you could do it without it. So anyway, those are some of the things that you can do to make more time for yourself. Really important. And yes, I do use Vellum for formatting. I love Scrivener is amazing for writing, but it is not that good for formatting. Now Amazon has changed a lot of the rules. Now, yes, Vellum is only for Mac. Sorry. I will be doing an interview with Brad from Vellum. Not this weekend, following weekend, Monday. So very exciting. Okay, so we've done the big rock, we've done the medium rocks, and now we're going to talk about the sand. And we started out today about, me saying, if you fill your jar with sand, you won't have any time to do the big rock activities. And what I think is happening in the indie author space and in much of the entrepreneurial space is so much of the activity is sand activity. And let's think of it as it runs through your fingers, as in at the end of the year, what are you left holding? The sand has run through your fingers, time has disappeared, and what have you achieved? And I have definitely felt that, well, for example, when I was preparing this slide, this really helped me, and I actually removed my email from my phone again. Now, I didn't have email on my phone for about 3 years, and then about 18 months ago, I put email back on my phone and pretty much got addicted to having email on my phone. But as I was doing this, I was like, do you know what? Checking email on my phone is a sand activity. I am going to delete it. So I have deleted it. I have not deleted Twitter. So, but I do spend too much time in email. So what I want you to think about these sand activities is that I have way too many metaphors, right? But they're a bit like cupcakes. They're good in small doses, like Twitter, great in small doses, Facebook, great in small doses. But if you go hard on these things, it will make you sick, and it's designed to be addictive, and you will wonder what the hell you have done with your time. So I've put some questions here. Are you doing email and social media for more than an hour a day? I definitely have to answer yes. Doing email for the Creative Pen and JF Pen is kind of part of my business, and that's important, but I definitely need to do less answering. So that's something, that I'm looking at, thinking about how I might reduce that. If you're commuting, what are you doing on your commute? I found that when I had a day job, the commute was really powerful for learning things. So if you are commuting, whether you're driving or on the train or the bus or whatever, are you listening to music, or could you be learning some of these courses, or keeping your mindset up, or doing things that you actually use that time? And the other thing there is, how much TV are you watching? And again, this is something that Jonathan and I have talked about with doing the new morning schedule, is okay, we have to be in bed by this time. So even though the TV is awesome right now, we've just started watching Westworld, which is great. We can't watch 3 episodes of it, so we have to cut that down. Now, back in the day, 2006, 2007, when I was first writing that first book, TV was still really bad. So I gave up the TV entirely back then. But now TV is actually great. And if you're, whether it's fiction or non-fiction, there's a lot of great TV, a lot of great movies. So I'm not suggesting you cut that out or that is a pointless activity. I actually think it's a great activity, but how much of it are you doing? So all of these things, I'm not saying that you shouldn't do them. I'm just saying how much of your jar is filled with sand. And as we said at the beginning, if too much is filled with sand, there's no room for these other rocks. So I really hope that this is making sense. Okay, Kristen says, do I schedule reading time? Well, we like to read in bed before, sleeping. So I do kind of schedule that. That's every night. But what I want to do at the weekends is spend a lot more time just reading. I've got a lot of books I want to read and I just haven't got enough time for them. So the weekend I want to read more and take more notes and just have more time for thinking. I thought I would get this done really quickly, but actually it's going quite well. Okay, so the next thing I want to say is about all the things that come up on the internet. And I am just as responsible for this as anyone else, because on my blog, on my podcast, on Twitter, I'm constantly sharing information that adds to your overload as well as my own. So what I'm not going to stop doing that. I'm going to keep doing that. And I also, every day, I find new information that I want to implement. So this is how I am managing it. And that is when you hear about a new tip or you listen to a podcast, like I just listened to a podcast with Pat Flynn, which was about going through and doing a blog edit, a content edit. And I've got 8 years. I've got 1,200 different posts on the blog, and this podcast said you have to go through all of them, and I'm sitting there going, I know I should do this, but this is a big deal. So what you do is you note it down. So either keep a document or a Scrivener project or an Evernote notebook or something electronic, because often these will be links, these will be ideas, and write them down. So there was I just pasted it in there from BookBub, 10 book marketing articles, top 10. And in there was 98 book marketing ideas. Now, I'm sorry, how can any of us implement 98 book marketing ideas? Now, of course, we might read that and there might be a couple of them that you are interested in. But what I want you to do is note down the ideas, note down the links and the quotes and all these things, and then every quarter revisit the document and go, okay, where do these fit? Do these fit in my big rock? So, for example, James Patterson did a masterclass at masterclass.com, and I really want to do that, and I did it, and it was awesome. And so that's something that I heard about, and I did it. It wasn't something I had to wait on because it went into my big rock category. The second one might be this 90, or let's take the example I just mentioned there of the blog audit. Now I've written that down. Am I going to do that? Well, I'm going to evaluate, where does that fit in my big rock, my medium rock, or my sand? If my biggest goal was grow the Creative Pen and make that the best website in the world, then yes, it would go into that bucket and I would do it. But actually, that's not my big rock goal, so it will go down the list. But put your things on your lists and then revisit it and think about where it fits and then whether you do it. So we just get these shiny object ideas and then we jump on them and then we switch focus and we're like little popcorn kittens, as Chris Rush calls it. But that's why I want you to write down that big rock next to your desk, so that when you get one of these popcorn kittens, you go, oh, then you look at your big rock and you go, no, doesn't fit, going to write it down, going to come back to it later if it's important. So for another example I just wrote here, we implemented a pop-up on the creativepenn.com yesterday. I have had implementing a pop-up on the Creative Penn for probably 4 years. And I didn't do it because, you know, I have a kind of, you know, you guys are probably already on my Author 2.0 blueprint list. But basically I was like, okay, we're going to do this now. But that's something that I've put off because it was not so high on my list. Okay, so hopefully that helped. Oh, Amelia said, I mostly follow podcasts, have cut way back on K-boards. Yeah, see, K-boards is something I never got into because I just felt, oh my goodness, that's such a, I will just get lost in there. That's a sand activity. I often find that things bubble up. You know, things that happen on K-boards will bubble up on things like the Sell More Book Show podcast, which I always listen to, or will come up in a blog post somewhere else. So you can cut back on a lot of these things. I mean, even my podcast, every week I'll tell you something about what's going on. So you don't necessarily need to follow everything. But this is very important because strategy is choosing what you don't do as well as what you do. And this is something I have to keep learning over and over again. And I'm not very good at it, but do what I say. Don't do what I do. You know, we all have limited time. And what will help you create a body of work you are proud of in your life? Like we say, at the end of the year, are you left with the sand running out, or are you left with something concrete? Are you left with something that you've achieved? And are you living that life you want to lead? And sometimes that will take a few more years, but are you taking a step forward, a measurable step forward? Okay, so we are almost at the end of the presentation. I'm just going to tell you a bit about how I do a production schedule for the year, and you're going to laugh. But these are my, this is a list, one of my lists. I have many lists, obviously, but this is my list of story ideas, or book, they're actually not story ideas. I have a separate list of story ideas. These are the books that I want to write. So the map series, for example, that could be huge in itself. London Psychic art crime book I want to write. The Deviant screenplay, there's a book in Japan I want to write. The Arcane Black Ops spin-off. Lots of other ones. Shadow book, I think I probably will write that. And an adaptation of one of my short stories. So these are all the ideas that I would love to work on. And some of them keep rolling forwards every year because I'm not ready for them, or they're not the ones that win. So what you have to think about, and I mean, you guys probably have all heard now of Chris Fox, the book Right to Market. He was on the podcast. I love Chris. I think he's great. His brain is not my brain. And yeah, I just can't do that. I'm more of the mindset of someone like David Morrell, who has been on the podcast as well. And David said, you know, life is short. What do you want to spend your time doing? And if I was just going to write stuff for the market, then I might as well just go back to my day job. So that's not something that I choose to do, but I'm certainly not having a go at anyone who wants to do that. So for me, I look at this list and go, okay, what am I most excited about? What do I really want to do? And those of you who follow my various social media know I'm really into this map stuff right now. So I'm going to work on the map stuff for January, February, and see how far I get. Because I'm now of the mind that you have to write 3 books in a series in order to satisfy readers. So I'm planning a trilogy. And then what are the other things that I can fit in apart from that? So what excites you? What will keep you interested? So, for example, which one? The Sins of Violence short story adaptation. I really like that short story, but every time I revisit the idea as a book, it doesn't quite fit. It's not something I'm massively interested enough in to do that project. That the question of also what does your market want fits into, for me, is that I write supernatural thrillers. So as a fiction author, so I write supernatural thrillers. So my books need to have a supernatural element. I have an idea for a techno thriller with biohacking, which is like, you know, hacking your genetics and stuff. But I don't write techno thrillers right now. So even though I'm interested in that, that's not something that I'm going to do. But my map series has magic and stuff in and supernatural things, so that does fit. So even though I'm not writing to market, I am writing to an existing audience. But think long-term about everything too. Here is my production schedule. Now, I think some of you might have thought that my production schedule might be more complicated than this, but this is essentially all I do in terms of the big rocks. Now, for you, this will be too many big rocks. So here, obviously, on the left are the months, and then these are the broad categories of things. I know, for example, in March, April, I'm writing a collaboration book. I mean, I am collaborating on a book. I also want to write the shadow book, which is a non-fiction book for the Creative Penn audience. I also want to write a book on creativity. I'm going to do this arcane book in New Orleans. There's all these things I'm going to do. So what you have to do is think about the whole year and where your focus is going to be. And what I've done in the slides is given you a blank sheet. So you can print it out and add your own books on there. And then Luke says, how much would this plan change over the year? It changes a ton. And remember that every year I post my on the 1st of January, I post my goals, and on the 30th of December, I post a roundup of the goals that I hit and I missed. So tomorrow, my blog post will go out and you will see what changed over the year. So you'll see that all the plans I had for 2016, I think I had something this ambitious, and I only managed 2 books. I wrote Destroyer of Worlds and I wrote The Successful Author Mindset, and I did the How to Write a Novel course, which is like a much bigger project, and also I wrote End of Days, fair enough, but it's not published yet, so this is the proof copy. And obviously, as I've said there, this plan is probably too ambitious. So this is what I'm aiming for. But, and also by making it more ambitious, I'm going to schedule the time for it. So yeah, anyway, I hope that helps you a little bit. But basically what I want you to think about is you do not have to get massively granular with these things. You can do this sort of bigger level. Then you can schedule your time with those more granular tasks. So write 2,000 words on map book 1 will be a task for February, and I'll actually schedule that into my calendar. So you see, we've circled back from the production schedule into the big rocks and then the scheduling the time. Okay, 5 to 9. I thought we'd be done like 20 minutes ago, but obviously this has gone on a bit. But I'm not selling any courses or anything today, but I did want to mention my book, The Successful Author Mindset, which is a book. It's also a workbook, and will be coming out in audio professionally on Audible in January, February sometime. So if you are struggling with the mindset stuff, and we all do, so I don't have the time, I don't have the discipline, I can't finish, why am I so bad compared to everyone else, overwhelm, all this type of stuff, check out The Successful Author Mindset, and you can download the slides at thecreativepenn.com/plan 2017. Okay, so let's get into the Q&A. How to create manageable goals and milestones. I think I answered that one. And in terms of feeling guilt, that's actually something that's very interesting. I feel guilty all the time about the things I don't achieve. But if you go back to that big rock thing, like I feel almost guilty about the years I spent in my day job not achieving much, or the hours I spent not learning things, but I'm making up for it now, obviously. But so don't feel guilty, just remedy it by doing something. Okay, so I'm going to say that I've done that because I think that was pretty much the whole discussion. Dean's question on discoverability. I've said this is not a book marketing conversation, but what I've put into that discussion is the medium-sized rocks, I think, are your marketing. Because in a year, I think as writers, the biggest goal should be the writing, and the medium-sized rocks are going to be your marketing things, like the keywords for Amazon. That's one of the things that you would put for a goal, a medium-sized rock goal for, say, 2 months. And in that 2 months, you should be able to carve out 5 hours or something and literally just spend that time, get your keywords for your genre. And that's generally what you need. I mean, if you write the same type of books, a lot of your keywords will be similar. So once you learn these principles, you can reuse them on the next book. So you just kind of have to choose the thing you're going to focus on learning. Like Facebook ads are another great example. I knew about Facebook ads several years ago and I resisted, and then Mark put his course out, and then Mark convinced me that this was a good idea to try, and I sat down and I learned it, and now it's a big part of my business. So you just have to make the time to do some of this stuff. Lucy says, my life is very complicated, like everybody's. I find planning the big picture overwhelming and set small goals without the big picture. I'd like guidance on big picture planning. Well, I hope that we did that with the rocks, that you feel like you now have a big rock goal, and that will help you with the granular stuff. And I hope that over the year, you will think to yourself, is this sand? Is this a medium rock? Is this a big rock? Like, you have to be doing that all year. And in fact, set yourself some reminders for the end of every quarter that say, is this a big rock? And hopefully that will remind you to check on what you're doing. And I know I do it too. I'll be like, popcorn kitten, and then I'll realize that, what is the point? I'm wasting my time. So yeah. And sometimes it's not wasting time. Sometimes it's stuff that is good, but you have to exchange good for better or best or your biggest goal. And that's the important thing. Oh, Jennifer says, take us through a typical day in the life of the creative pen. How do you get everything you accomplish done? What have you outsourced and why? Okay, so again, remember with my very second slide that I do this full time. I have the creativepen.com. I also have JF Pen, my fiction. This next year, I've got some bigger goals, and on New Year's Day, you'll see my goals for New Year. I'll also share it on the podcast on Monday. So I don't think I don't have a typical life. I know that. So I don't want anyone to think that your life has to be like mine. But basically, right now, the typical day is to try and do this creative time slot in the morning early. And then we're doing some exercise of some kind. So, you know, we all need exercise. We all want to live a long time, right? So some kind of exercise. Then I do a lot of the business tasks. So like today, for example, I was working on my autoresponders. Oh, I should say that every night now I'm planning. I've got it here. Can I show you? Yes, I can show you this. I just do a little quick list of what I'm doing and when. So this morning, actually, at 8 o'clock this morning, I did a podcast interview. Then I had an accountability meeting on Skype. Then I did some exercise. Then I did my autoresponders. Then I worked on this presentation. And then obviously this evening, I'm doing this presentation. So it's a combination in my life between the creative time and the creative pen time. But even then I have to balance the maker with the manager. And running your own business is exactly the same as a day job in that I have to do my accounting and I like to keep a handle on that. I do email, you know, it's not all just writing books and drinking coffee. So the typical day would be the same as you. If you have a day job, which again, a lot of you do, or maybe you're, you know, looking after the kids or whatever, whatever you do in a biggest block of your time, it's the same for me, but I'm doing it around the business. And remember, there's 2 of us now. So this is, yeah, there's a lot more to be done. In terms of what I've outsourced, I'm trying to outsource more and more. So I have a couple of virtual assistants now. I try and find software that does things. Jonathan does, it's not outsourced, but he does the video editing and email stuff and some other technical things. But generally I try and find tools, and then I have some people that I'm starting to ask to do more. Obviously I have editor, cover designer, all of those types of things. So as your business grows, that's the type of thing that will change. But when I started at the beginning, 2006 to 2011, I had the day job and I was building all of this on the side. Julie says, I think it was a tip from Mark McGuinness about putting a couple of tasks on the day for it. And that's a version of what I have here, the sort of a couple of the things that are happening, because otherwise you get lost in a massive to-do list. So yeah, that's awesome. Jules says, I read Tim Grohl's book and it sounds like before launching a book, it takes months of build up to set up your connectivity system, permission marketing. How can you do permission marketing without a first book? Okay, so again, we're not getting into detail on marketing, but this to me is a question about the big rock. If you have a book in editing stage and you are looking at Tim Grohl's book on launching, or you're doing I know Tim's got a new podcast on launching. Fantastic to be looking at that as a new author, but your big rock is to finish that book, and all the other stuff can end up being popcorn kittens. And I think generally it's an established fact in the indie world that your first book is not going to be the book that changes the world. Your first book will definitely change your life, but it will only be the start of your author journey. So basically, if you have a book in editing stage, your big rock in 2017 is to get that book into the world, and your medium rocks are learning things like marketing, building your author website, etc. Rebecca says, how much time in days or weeks do you typically allocate for each phase of the process of writing a book? Does it vary a lot? So I did talk a little bit about this. So for me, the research phase, so this MacBook stuff I've been doing bits and bobs of reading on now for maybe a month, but not sustained time. January, I'm going to have sustained research time, like I'm just going to indulge myself and just go deep because it's a new series. So I'm just gonna let loose in research. And then February, I will be in New Zealand and Australia, and I'm going to be writing something for hopefully the first draft of the first book. And so for me, I tend to write in 2,000 to 3,000 word batches when I do my first draft. So I will allocate to do 2,000 to 3,000 words, probably about 2.5 hours for me. And that's generally pretty finished prose at this point. Remember, I have written 21 books now, so I'm getting better at how it's done. My first novel took a lot longer, and my second novel. So yeah, but yes, it does vary a lot. If you have an established world, so I will write an Arcane book in the middle of the year, and my Arcane series is, I know the characters, I know what happens, so that will be a lot faster. But this new series will take longer. And then something like the Successful Author Mindset book took so much longer than I thought it would. It's a relatively short book, but it's super deep. And I actually had to go through a lot of my old journals to find the things I was writing about. I had to think a lot. So that took a lot longer than I expected, considering the word count in it. And the idea I have for my non-fiction book this year, the Shadow book, that's a working title, it won't be called that. That is also a deep book. So again, that will probably take longer than I think. So yeah, I really believe in doing, giving things the time they need. Yes, I like deadlines. Yes, I like to get things out and publish them. But, it's very important that I'm happy with a book before I publish it. So hopefully that answers your question. Alex says, marketing your fiction on a tiny budget with 5 children and my day job, how can I effectively market myself without breaking the bank? Now, this is again another great question that goes together with our goals, because, and I have actually written an answer down here, but for me, with fiction and in fact non-fiction, if you have a very small budget or no budget, then writing a series and putting the first on perma-free is going to be your best way, or using KDP Select and cycling through your free days and your countdown deals. And that you don't need any money to do that. You can also even use a tool like Canva, canva.com, and I'm not even an affiliate of it, to do your book cover. And you can use online tools like Grammarly to do some basic line editing. It's not story editing, but you know, if you're bootstrapping, then you can find a lot of help with these online tools to get started. But yes, if for the best, cheapest marketing, I think it is writing more books. So it's your time, not your money, and you know, putting them up and using the perma-free. Amy says, when you learn from others, how do you organize the notes? It's a great question. And I write a lot of, you can probably see behind me as a lot of notebooks, journals that I've been writing down for years, and I revisit those. So at the end of the year, I will go through my journals for the year. I will often move actions into my things. So my to-do list versus notes versus to-do things are quite different. But as I said, starting a Scrivener document or use Evernote or, you know, whatever, a Google Doc or something, and use those to just lump together the things that you learn and then turn that into your goals. Lots of good suggestions for notebooks there. And as I said, by the end of 2017, I will have a beautiful creative pen notebook plan. I'll be talking more about that as the year goes on. Suki, hello Suki, says, what are the key main areas an author entrepreneur needs to be planning for the upcoming year, i.e. time for writing, time for marketing? What are the most important areas for new authors to be spending time on? So we've obviously talked a bit about this, because I guess we've talked about it in a way that I've challenged you to come up with the answer. So it's not about my answer, although I hope that you understand that the big rock needs to be something big and not just I have been on Twitter or Facebook, 10 hours a week all year, and I've built up 200 followers or 2,000 followers or whatever. That is not a big rock goal. That is a sand thing. So I want you all to think about that, make a time, manage a time, and decide what is the most important thing for you to spend that time on. And I haven't mentioned it so far, but a lot of people have died this year. Prince was the big one for me in terms of thinking about my life as a creative. I'm 41. I think he was 56 or something. He was in his 50s anyway. And I'm like, okay, so if I have 15 more years, what do I want to spend my time on? I mean, I hope I have at least that long. But, this is the thing. We have to consider, what are the things that are important to build the body of work that we want to achieve in our life? And that's what I keep coming back to. It's got to be more books. I actually, as much as I love doing this with you guys, I hope that you get more out of my books and what I create in the world than just chatting. Okay. Yes, so Suki puts there, big rock equals publish my book. That's fantastic. So put that next to your computer, Suki, and everything that is not going towards that goal, then consider whether you need to do it now. Does it need to be done, or is it just popcorn kittens? Yeah, so Wilhelmina says it's so important not to put one's life off to someday, but do it now. Absolutely. So whatever that's why I'm going to write the shadow book this year. And that idea is the sort of, how do you use your darkness? How do you stop self-censoring and use your darkness in your writing? That's a pretty big question from Carl Jung's idea of the shadow. And I've talked about this before. I want to write that book. I've been wanting to write that book for a long time. So that is going on my list this year. So it's a It's a big one. Kim says she can't wait for it. Excellent. I'm glad, because it means a lot to me, and I feel the need to do another deep book like this Successful Author Mindset. Danielle says, I've been playing too long in the sand pit. I've been worrying about marketing, should be writing my sequel. See, you know this, you feel it. And of course we need marketing, but it's small rocks or sand. Think about the big rocks too. Okay. Kim says, oh, this is great. Kim says, do you ever think about the risk of going off genre? Steve says, I write on multiple topics. What is the best way to not look like a jack of all trades, master of none? So, you know, for this question, writing in multiple genres, I want you to listen. And again, I did the interview this morning and I mentioned her earlier. So Christine Catherine Rush and Dean Wesley Smith, they are like my gurus. And I interviewed Chris this morning and I sounded like a complete fangirl. It was ridiculous. But Chris is a fantastic example of someone who does exactly this. She and Dean write in so many genres. She has a lot of different pen names. She writes all kinds of different books. And over the long term, that's what you have to do to satisfy the different sides of your personality. So I don't have any issue with that. I do think that in order to not confuse people, having different brand names is a good idea, which is why this book is under JF Penn and my thrillers are under JF Penn, because you guys are here for the happy. Some of you have read my darker books. And that's awesome. But you need to know what you're getting with Joanna Penn. You need to know what you're getting with JF Penn. So these are important things. So if you do write all over the place, then consider, how do you group them together? And what Chris said on this interview this morning is, she said it's more about the emotional resonance and the promise to the reader. So for example, you could write children's books and sweet romance, you know, where there's not even any kissing, or one kiss, under one name. You can write horror under another one. So you have to really think about how it sort of feels to the reader. How do you schedule being prolific? Dean says, yeah, it's just butt in the chair time. Go read Dean Wesley Smith. He's the king. He is the king of it. Sarah says, balancing business and writing. I think we've pretty much covered that around maker time and manager time, which will both move your writing forward and move your business forward. So if you, the other way to think about it, I guess, is the seesaw. Which side are you spending more time on? And if you're spending more time on manager side, then it's probably not surprising if you're not doing as well as you want to, because you need more maker time. So have a look at that. Can you share your best productivity tips on writing? How to get the words out faster, how to collate or look for ideas, how to engage on social media. Goodness me, Suki. You're getting all the questions out, but these are the ones voted up. So best productivity tip on writing, getting the words out faster. One is more hours in the chair. And again, look at Dean Wesley Smith. He talks a lot about this, but basically he writes something like 2 million words a year. He writes a whole book and a magazine of short stories a month. And basically he writes about 1,000 words an hour. So he doesn't write fast, he spends more hours in the chair, and he does it every day. So that the productivity tip for writing is more hours in the chair. And also you could also look at dictation, which I'm going to try and get back into this year. I did that for Destroyer of Worlds, but my first draft typing is very clean, but my first draft dictation is not. So I do want to try again with dictation. So that is another option. Collating, curating, or looking for ideas. It's difficult to say how everybody does it differently. But I've got right down here, I can't show you, it's massive. I've got a massive pile of books, and I'm in my maker time, I'm going through the books with my notebook, and I'm writing down things that come up as I'm going through the books, or if I'm doing it with a Kindle book, I'm highlighting and that type of thing. So it's just probably the biggest tip with research and ideas is being in tune with what you are curious about. So if you feel a sort of tug towards something, then that's what you write down, or that's what you notice in the world, and that will be the thing that is the basis of your research. So get used to noticing when you're interested in something. And then how to engage on social media or marketing without spending hours on it. Well, you just have to schedule the time. So if you say, I'm going to do 30 minutes maximum a day, you know, or I'm going to do 10 minutes a day. But if you try and do 10 minutes on Facebook, you know it's going to be longer than that. So yeah, say 30 minutes a day and that's it. You know, you just have to be hard on yourself, really, if you want to get stuff done. Letty says, which Dean Wesley Smith book would you recommend for the first-time author? Well, he has a ton, and so it's difficult. It will depend which topic you want, but go and check out his blog. He certainly has books on writing, craft. Chris has a book on discoverability that I would do. Yeah, so Intisa there says, I'm going to buy a nice a loud timer for when I use social media. That's a really great idea. You know, set your time deadlines and be really clear on them. I mean, yeah, you just have to be much harder on yourself. And remember, we all need to set our reminders for every quarter. That maybe we all need to send each other a picture of a big jar with rocks in to say, are you sticking to your rock goals? Yeah, okay. Setting priorities. I think we have pretty much answered that one from Amber. What is the best way to focus on what's most important? I think that is choosing your big rock. And while working a day job, that is literally just scheduling the time outside of your day job, as I did for those first 5 years. It just has to be done. And now, I mean, essentially, my business is my day job, and my fiction, I kind of have to put around it. So any questions around how to set up things, or what to do technically, or you know, how to phrase things? Again, it's all about modeling. So this example is giving away a free book and telling them that there's a newsletter. You can go to my fiction site, jfpenn.com/free, and you can literally model what I've done. And I modeled what Nick Stevenson taught. So these are things that you can just share. Yesenia says, do you schedule or take time off in between big projects or at certain times of year? So I talked a bit about this earlier, but I think it's really important that you do schedule the time off. And it's something I've been very bad at. Now I've already, for next Christmas, I've already scheduled time off for the last 2 weeks of December, because I got really sick this year, and I don't want that to happen again. And it was because I was working too hard. So next year I've already gone through the whole year and I've scheduled time off. Someone asked earlier about being an introvert. And it's true, these types of things and speaking are very tiring for me. And I basically overloaded my speaking schedule, and then I just got sick. I did too much. So what I have to do is schedule my time now. So I've already blocked out, and I know when I am speaking, and I've blocked out time before and after those things. And I've also blocked out holidays. I've booked out you know, just time off, and I've put my weekly walks in my schedule, so I know that has to be done, and that can't be work day, stuff like that. So yes, definitely schedule your stuff so that you don't kill yourself. There's a lot of burnout in the indie author community, so yeah, you do have to be careful. And most of us are introverts, I think, as writers, so you have to look after yourself. Okay, Kristen says, do you edit one thing while writing something new at the same time? No, I say no, but I can do it now, but I wouldn't recommend it if you're early on in your writing career, because you can kind of contaminate your brain. I can do it with fiction and non-fiction, but I can't do it with 2 fiction projects. I kind of have to finish one before I start the next one. But again, you know, you might be different. Meg says she's just put her walks in her schedule. She's building a daily timetable right now. Excellent. And I think this is the key. And then we remind ourselves, look, take time off. You know, otherwise, once the year starts, we just get into this thing and we just keep going. And yeah, we just need to be much more careful with ourselves this year. And hey, I expect you to email me if at the end of the year I'm sick again and I'm burnt out. Yeah. Again, do what I say, don't do what I do. Okay. Valerie says, I know how to set smart goals, timely and all that type of thing. I discovered this year I have trouble with making and reaching intangible goals like getting healthy. I can't seem to cross that off my list. That's awesome, Valerie. So what happened with me this year? So I did this 100K walk, right? Like super fit. Woohoo! And then I basically, since then, I've just completely fallen off the wagon and now I have to start again. So fitness is like make a time. It is time that you can never stop doing. So that's where you have to schedule in your diary, you know, this time is my maker time, this time is my exercise time. Otherwise it doesn't get done. And, you know, yeah, you just have to schedule it basically. I feel like I spend too much time writing the drafts and too little time writing and too much time editing. If it's your first book, that is going to happen, and it will happen until you really internalize how to write. So I wouldn't worry too much about it. The book I would recommend is called Perfectionism and How It Harms Writers by my guru, Christine Catherine Rush. And that is an excellent book. I also talk about that in the Successful Author Mindset, because there is a line between quality and perfectionism. So yeah, you do have to assess that. But yeah, at the beginning, you definitely do more editing than later on. We are going to stop there. So I would just like, before we go, for those of you who are still on, please will you put your big rock goal into the chat box. So big rock goal into the chat box so I can see what your big rocks are going to be before we finish this evening. Anyone want to share your big rocks? Kim published 3 books. Letty published my first book, and Suki, and I'm gonna take these screen prints. Finished first draft, fantastic, brilliant. Finished trilogy, publish draft 2 books. This is great. Okay, I hope you're all seeing this, because if everybody who is sharing right now does these goals, we're going to have an amazing year. Yeah, I hope you guys see that. Can you imagine how many books the lot of us can put out by the end of the year if everybody does this stuff? I'm gonna cry. It's amazing. This would be fantastic. So then my big challenge for all of you is to think about the rock diagram. And I hope that together we can all achieve these goals in 2017. So thank you all for coming this evening. I really enjoyed seeing you all, and I hope that you have an amazing year. Happy New Year, and here's to achieving lots in 2017. Bye for now.